Hey, very good morning to everybody out there. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Today's webinar will be on our AutoPilot ChlorSync Gen 2. And Sean Assam, many of you will know him, is conducting the webinar this morning. But for those of you who don't know Sean, he's our National Accounts and Commercial Products Manager for Aquacal and AutoPilot. And Sean has been with us for 20 years in our manufacturing division, and 13 of those have been with AutoPilot. So he's held roles of customer service, technical and service support, research and development, as well as sales. And Sean has presented seminars and technical training internationally, including some of the well-attended pool industry trade shows in the US. So without further ado, let's turn it over to Sean.
Thank you, Greg, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. During the presentation, I encourage you to go into the chat or to the Q&A and post your questions in there. And it will be pointed out to me that there's a question up. So as we're going through, like I said, we're going to go into the autopilot specifically for the improvements, the changes, and the new products that we're conceptualizing as far as like our commercial products and future development. So I know one of the things that has been exciting for us over the last couple of days. Let me see if my presentation is working. Is that right there? Florida Panthers, Stanley Cup champions. It was a very exciting week for us when we saw that our hockey team had won the Stanley Cup championship. So go Panthers. All right, so let's look at the autopilot. We've got a long history of autopilot chlorine generators. When you look at this picture of the history of our autopilot systems, you see all the units on the top row were built with this manifold design. There are a lot of benefits that we found with the manifold design. It was a patented design that was made simply for the purpose of controlling the flow that's going through the cell. What we found out is if we can control the flow going through the cell by slowing down the flow, that we're able to generate the chlorine but treat the water much more efficiently and more effectively. Um, so that's one of the things that we've done with our system that separates us from any other chlorine generator manufacturer. As you can see there, also we've got several different models on the power supplies, as well as the one in the middle, which has the big commercial 6-cell system, 6 power supply system. Then we got into the total control, which was the ORP and pH automation. Well, during the COVID years, we had a lot of supply side shortages that forced us to kind of discontinue some of the models that we had simply because our suppliers were not able to get a circuit board, so we weren't able to build some of the models. As a result, we came out with the ChlorSync system, as you see on the bottom row in the middle. ChlorSync system for us was kind of a system that we were kind of forced to bring out because that was the majority option for us to continue to provide chlorine generators to our dealers. But there was a couple of things that we found with that forced us to kind of upgrade our systems. And one of it was that we were having difficulties with the cell itself as a result that we created something differently. And you can see in the pictures down here, we went from a metal box to a plastic box, a little bit of ventilation on the side and control on the front of the cell. But one of the most important things that we heard repeatedly was the call for why did you get rid of the manifold? All right, so that's what we're going to focus on. The main components that we find with every chlorine generator is you're going to have a power center, you're going to have a cell, and you're going to have some kind of flow protection. Because when we're generating chlorine, one of the byproducts is going to be hydrogen gas. You've got some sodium hydroxide, which causes the pH to rise, and of course the chlorine. So the hydrogen gas is what's most important for us to evacuate out of the cell area and move back to the pool so it evaporates back into the air. All right, so the flow protection is just basically saying there's sufficient flow for the cell to activate that we can get rid of the hydrogen gas. All right, so let's look at the the ChlorSync system. What we did was we combined the best of the new and then combine it with the old faithful manifold design of the old. So we call it a hybrid system. And like I said, we listened to the feedback from you guys, from the dealers, from the customers saying, the manifold design was unique for us and it really offered something different to give to the customer. So let's look at the old ChlorSync system. The power supply had proved to be pretty reliable for us. What happened was the power center itself, we were comfortable with, but on the cell design, the display on the cell was a little tedious for us. So we moved the cell onto, or the display onto the power center. Okay. So now we took the old design. You see here is a picture of the digital nano and the manifold assembly. Well, we kept the manifold assembly. And if you look at the brochure picture on the left, we basically created the Gen 2 ChlorSync system. This allowed us a couple of other benefits as well. When we start getting into the sizing of the system on the Gen 2, we've gone back to the PPC-1, the PPC-3, PPC-4, and PPC-5 cells. As you can see on the chart, it's rated for 30,000, up to 40,000, up to 50,000, and up to 70,000 gallons with a single cell. We also still have the availability of the PoolSync Wi-Fi controller. This is what gives us an advantage from the old nanos and from the digital units, is that it's always been a standalone system. There's no way to remotely access it. You cannot communicate with controller systems with our unit. So with going to the Gen 2 power supply, it allows us the capability of connecting with the PoolSync Wi-Fi controller, which gives us the opportunity to remotely access the salt system, the salt readings, the output settings, and all the different control features of the chlorine generator system. All right. As you can see on the chart here also, there's a couple of features that we have that no other chlorine generator offers. Patented temperature compensation. The tri-sensor assembly detects flow, temperature, and salt levels. We operate up to 104 degrees. It's got a patented bypass assembly. Like I mentioned, the benefits of the manifold, and I'll go into it a little bit more detailed. So we get the controlled flow rate through the manifold assembly. Operates as low as 15 gallons per minute. So what that allows you to do, because we know there's a trend of circulation pumps going towards variable speed pumps. Our manifold design allows you to optimize that benefit to the homeowner because we're able to run at a lower RPM and achieve proper flow going through the system. One of the benefits of the Gen 2 system, or the ChlorSync system, is that now we do have automatic cover connection. So what that means is that if you're dealing with a pool that has an automatic cover on it, or if they use some kind of cover over it, we know that the chlorine demand when the pool's covered up is much less than if it's just an open pool, open to the environment. So we've got a automatic cover connection that allows us to adjust the output of the unit, that when it recognizes that the cover's closed, it reduces the output to 1/5 of whatever the normal setting is. So if you're normally running at, let's say, 60% output, it will reduce the output to 3%, which is 1/5 of it. All right. So it does have the capability of adjusting the output based on automatic cover. And similar to the old nanos and the digital units, we do have the 24-hour boost cycles still. All right. So let's get on to sizing recommendations. Here's a chart that shows all the different cells that we offered, and it gets into the recommended gallons of water that they were recommended for. As you can see on here in the Nano and the Nano Plus units, on the right column, it's recommended for 28 and 35,000 gallons for those systems. With the soft touch, the digital, and the 75003, which was also similar to the digital unit, you can see based on the size of the cell, it was rated for 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, 80,000 gallons. Now, when we got into the ChlorSync, the Generation 1, we had these cells that we call the CS30, CS40, and CS50, which were rated for 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. Now we're getting into the Gen 2, one of the things that you'll notice is the salt levels would normally be around 2,500 to 3,000. With the Gen 2 system, we want to get it up to about 3,500, which is more of the ideal range for a salt level. All right. And then you can see the output of the system based on the PPC1 cell, 30,000 gallons. PPC3 would be the 40,000. PPC4 is 50,000. And the PPC5 cell up to 70,000 gallons. All right. And you can see the big marking down here, always oversize the cell. And the main reason I recommend that, it does a couple of things. Naturally, if you oversize the cell's going to last longer before you need to replace it. But the other thing with oversizing the cell is, remember I mentioned the sodium hydroxide and the pH rising. One of the nuances with a salt system is that there's a tendency for the cell to get scaled up. And the reason it gets scaled up is because the pH rises with a salt system. The fact of the matter is the pH rises when the cell is energized, all right, and produces that sodium hydroxide byproduct. So when you oversize a cell, what that allows you to do is to run it at a lower output, so the cell does not operate as long, which means the pH is not impacted as much. All right. So always oversize the cell. It's always going to be the best recommendation to provide longevity of the cell and to avoid the pH rise and the cell scaling up. All right. So let's take a look at the Gen 2 Power Center. The Gen 2 Power Center, the picture on the left shows you the ventilation fan on the bottom, your display on the side with the cover that protects it from any kind of sun exposure and any kind of weather like rain or sprinkler systems. It protects the display. All right. In the middle picture, you can see the display comes on. If there's any problematic scenarios, you'll see a red light. If you get the green lights, it means everything's good. It'll indicate on here also what your salt level is. There is a way to get into the diagnostics of a system, just like we could with the nano and the digital units where we went into test pool pilot. It gives us a diagnostics of what's going on with the system, what the salt level is, the water temperature, and then gets into the cell amps and volts. All right. The power supply you can see is a much smaller footprint than the old digital unit. It's a little bit bigger than the nano unit, but as far as the size itself, the physical size, it's about the same size as the nano unit. All right. On the bottom of the power supply, we do have the connection for the tri-sensor unit and the banana plugs, and as well as knockouts for the various connections and connectivity to your pool sync system. Okay. All right, so I see your question, is the PPC2 cell compatible with the Gen 2 system? The answer is yes, it is. At this point, we're not offering as a standard package, though, but if you do have a system out there where you are going to replace the power center with the Gen 2 power center, it will work properly with any of the cells that we manufacture in the PPC model line. It will not work with the CS cells, the ChlorSync cells. All right, so hopefully that answers your question. All right, so let's look at the Gen 2 again. All right, so it's a hybrid system, like I mentioned, and incorporates the best of the new ChlorSync Gen 2 Power Center and the proven manifold assembly. It's integratable with the pool sync system and gets into the operation of the ChemSync, which I'll touch on, which is our automation similar to our old total control system, where we have an ORP and pH sensor and we have an automatic acid pump feed. Let's look at here. All right, so the pool sync system is our Wi-Fi system, allows us compatibility with the ChemSync system also. This will replace the old Nano, the Nano Plus, the soft touch unit, the digital unit, and the 75003. So this allows us the ability to upgrade any of those systems that are out in the field right now with the manifold configuration by updating to the Gen 2 Power Center. Again, it gives us the ability to add the pool sync system, which gives you the remote operation. It gives us the ability to expand on it and upgrade it to the ChemSync system. All right. So there was one point. Let me go back to that one slide. There was one point where there was a conceptual goal to move the display to the front of the unit itself. Since we've come out with the Gen 2 system with the display on the side of the box, we've had it out since about, I want to say, December, January of this year. And so far it's been received very well. We haven't had any really requests to put it to the front. So our thought pattern is if it's working fine on the side, moving it to the front will actually involve a little more engineering time to make sure that it works properly on the front of the unit. So unless there's a high demand for it to be moved to the front of the unit, I think we're just going to continue building it with the display on the side. Some of the feedback that we're getting is it actually stays out of the sunlight more on the side, so it protects the system much better. It's not that difficult to monitor, to look at it on the side, and to operate the buttons either. So it's worked out very well for us. The other thing is that the cell cord must be a banana plug configuration. All right. And what that means is when you look at the old Nano unit, instead of this banana plug configuration, the Nano unit had a molded plug connector, all right, which plugged into the bottom of the Nano. So whenever you order a Gen 2 power center, it will come with the cell cord, so you don't have to worry about compatibility or having to order anything else to upgrade any of the Nano Plus units or the 75003 systems out in the field. All right. The patented manifold assembly. Now, in the patented manifold assembly, like I'd mentioned before, there's a check valve on the bottom that allows us to regulate the flow that's going through the top. Now, if you're not familiar with the manifold assembly, this is how it comes from the factory, so that we've got the flow coming in. That spring check valve will open and close based on the amount of flow that's going through there. There is a screen right in here so we can trap any debris before it gets up into the sensor, which is located at the top. That's our tri-sensor, which, like I said, it's testing for water flow, water temperature, and salt level. There are 3 different sensors that are testing for those 3 points. Okay. And then it goes down to the cell. And of course, we're going to have the PPC cells, which with the unions allows you to easily remove it to service it or to exchange it as needed. And then the water goes back into the system. Now, let's go and talk about the tri-sensor, which sets us apart from a lot of other salt systems. First of all, like I said, the flow sensor, it's basically going to be a Harwell flow switch, and it allows the water to hit this paddle, which hits the center post to let you know that there's proper flow. Again, we've got a lower flow capability for it to activate so the system operates properly. And again, we're measuring flow, not pressure, like using a pressure switch. The salt sensor. So the next sensor is a salt sensor. It's a conductivity tester that's testing the salinity that's in the water itself. We do display this in parts per million on the display of the unit. If you've got the ChlorSync Wi-Fi app, it will show you parts per million. And if you're low on salt, it will also calculate how much salt is needed to maintain that 3,500 part per million. Okay. Like I said, that's one of the features that no other chlorine generator provides. When we look at the salt levels also, we've got a low salt warning about 2,700. And when it gets to about 20, let me show you that picture. So here's your flow sensor. Here are your salt paddles. When we get down about 2,400 parts per million, that's when you'll get a low salt warning and actually shut it off, because at that point it starts becoming too low of a salt level. The little white post here is your temperature sensor. There's a couple of things that we do with the temperature sensor that, like I said, that makes this more unique. All right. We've got this feature that's called the automatic temperature compensation feature. Again, no one else offers this feature. What that tells me is that when the water temperature increases, there's typically a higher chlorine demand. So we need more chlorine. As a result, our unit will increase output to generate more chlorine as water temperature increases. Okay. On the other side, when water temperature decreases, it will reduce the output. But what happens when salt systems gets about 50, 55 degrees is all of our competitors will start shutting down their chlorine generation system. AutoPilot does not. We will continue operating below that 50-degree threshold. We do the temperature compensation to where the output is reduced, but we never shut off. Okay. Because one of the big things is if you're selling a customer a salt system and you're charging them thousands of dollars for salt systems in most cases, why should you have to tell them that the water temperature is too cold? They have to supplement chlorine. With the autopilot, you don't have to do that. We will continue generating chlorine under those conditions. All right. All right, so the ChemSync system. The ChemSync system is our total control system. And what this does, it bumps up or upgrades the regular ChlorSync system to fully automated your pH and your chlorine control. All right, so going into the chlorine generator system, I'm sorry, let me jump back here. All right, so here are the part numbers for the power center with the manifold configuration. You will need to add the ChemSync system, which you look over here is a secondary box along with a 5-gallon acid tank. And you can see on the secondary box, the ChemSync system comes the acid pump. And then the third component that you will need is the PoolSync Wi-Fi antenna, which connects to communicate with both boxes. Okay. Now, inside of the ChemSync system, you can see, like I said, the acid pump. It's a 12-volt acid pump. It's a small, compact design, and it works perfectly with residential applications. This is not currently a commercial system unless you've got a small commercial pool. In the box itself, you can see that we've got the ORP and pH sensors, which takes a water sample, evaluates if it needs chlorine or not, and evaluates if it needs any kind of pH adjustment or not. And we'll turn on the acid pump. If it needs to add some acid solution, it will activate the cell if it needs some chlorine generation. And the nice thing about this is done on demand. It's not going to cycle on and off based on a percentage. You're setting your set points and it will activate if the pH starts to rise and if your chlorine level starts to drop. Now, like I said, on the ChemSync features, it's got the pH and ORP monitoring and control because we will be monitoring through the PoolSync system. It receives power from the ChlorSync power center, so there's no other power wires that needs to be connected to the unit. There are just 2 cables that go between this box and the Gen 2 power center. The Stenner pump, which is a recognized name for reliability, and they've been a company around for a long time that we've partnered with. That's who we're getting the 12-volt Stenner pump from. The 5-gallon tank is a UV-rated outdoor tank, so it can be placed outside. Again, naturally, wherever you place it, make sure that it's not in close proximity to electronics because any kind of acid solution has a tendency for vapors to escape and can cause corrosion. So make sure that that tank is located properly as well. It is PoolSync ready. We do need the PoolSync to be able to control the ChemSync system. Simple installation and service, and there's an auxiliary output control, which means that if there is a Stenner pump already on site and you really don't want to use this, you want a bigger pump because you've got a bigger volume pool, that auxiliary control will allow you to control that secondary pump instead of using this, the factory supplied pump. All right. And I have to apologize if there are questions. I cannot see it on my screen right now. So, Pamela, if you can, just point it out if there are any questions, that would be great. All right, so the ChemSync system view, when we look at the complete system of an installation of a ChemSync unit, we've got the PoolSync antenna, which connects to the ChlorSync, and the ChlorSync will connect to the ChemSync system. All right, so if we look at the plumbing configuration, we've got the suction side, which goes into the pump. From the pump, it goes to the filter. Filter goes to the heat pump, back out through the manifold and back to the pool. Now, there's going to be 3 injection points that we're going to be drilling into the system. The first one in the manifold assembly is going to be our water sample line. All right, so at the manifold assembly, we want to make sure that we're taking a water sample before any chemicals are added and after its water's filtered. All right, so at this point, we're taking a water sample that's going to go to the flow cell. And in the flow cell, we're going to test the water, but we're returning that water back into the suction side of the pump. Now, by doing this, what we're doing is we're creating this circulation in this positive direction. So it's always circulating the water through this flow cell, and we're getting a good picture of what's taking place in the pool water itself. All right. So the other point of injection, like I said, we've got the water sample, the water return, and then we're going to have the acid feed. From the acid feed, we're going to take that acid from the tank through the pump, and then we're going to feed it right into the manifold again, right before the cell, but after that water sample pickup point. Okay. So we're doing a couple things by feeding the acid into the manifold. The first thing is, like I said, we've got a tendency for scale to build up in the cell because of the rising pH. Now, by adding the acid at this point, it's going to give us a couple of benefits. The first thing is, by adding acid there, we're going to help keep that cell clean of any kind of calcium scale buildup. All right. The second benefit to adding the acid there is when we deal with chlorine, a lower pH will actually strengthen the amount of chlorine, the chlorine itself. The hypochlorous acid component of chlorine is greatly enhanced. So we've got stronger chlorine at that point. So as it's feeding acid, we've got a much stronger chlorine production, and we have the ability to make sure that the cell stays clean of any kind of calcium scale. And then it goes back to the pool. All right. So again, we've got a couple of features on here that gives your homeowner a lot of benefits. Like I said, because we can control the pH, there's less chance of the cell scaling up. And because we can control the chlorine level, there's less chance of overchlorination or underchlorination of that pool or spa. Okay.
Sean, is this a good moment to ask or
Yes.
formulate questions? Khalil, I'm going to allow you to speak, so feel free to ask Sean anything you need, okay?
Good morning, Khalil. You're on mute right now, so I'm not able to hear you. Pamela, does he have the ability to unmute himself, or do you have to do that?
I enable his microphone, and
right.
so he just needs to click the little button, his mic button, and that's all. Khalil, whenever you have a chance, you can type the question so we can keep it going in the presentation, okay?
Okay. So yeah, that's the ChemSync system overview. It's a fairly simple installation. And again, it basically what it does, it helps maintain your water chemistry in regards to the pH and the chlorine levels. All right. Now, PoolSync, one of the upgraded features that allows us to basically monitor the operation of the ChlorSync system by way of a phone app is our PoolSync Wi-Fi controller. The PoolSync Wi-Fi controller is a very affordable way of being able to remotely monitor your chlorine generator system. Now, this basically involves a phone app, and then, like I showed you in the previous picture, a Wi-Fi antenna that connects to the PoolSync system. Now, if you're using our AquaCal heat pumps, the PoolSync system will also connect to our AquaCal heat pumps to give you remote operation of the equipment. Now, if you've got an AquaCal heat pump and a Gen 2 system on the same pool, you can use one antenna to communicate with both devices. All right. And we'll get into some of the different things on there. All right, so Chris is asking, is the app available in Grand Cayman? I am 100%, well, I'm 99% sure that it is, because it's basically you need to connect to a Wi-Fi signal, and that allows you the remote operation. Because I know when I was traveling overseas, I was able to pull up the ChlorSync app and show it from my phone. All right, so
Yeah, sure. And it definitely should be available, Chris. It's Greg here. So if you have any issues downloading the app, please let me know, and then we'll get it taken care of.
All right. So when we look at the phone app itself, you'll see a couple of things on here. It gives you advanced functionality of the system. All right. So if you look on this kind of a desktop view, the chlorine level at 60%, you can press the arrow up or you can press it down to change that percentage. You can also click your finger on the dot and you can drag it up or down to adjust the percentage output that you wanted to control at. All right. You'll see here also you've got a toggle switch that allows you to go into a 24-hour boost mode. We don't have the 72-hour boost mode anymore. 24-hour boost seems to be more used than a 72-hour boost. So we just kept it to one option on there. The other information you see, the salt level, it's displaying your salt level in parts per million. It's telling you if the flow is good or not. So it's going to show you on or off. And here's one of the unique features that we're giving you now is their cell life remaining. Because another question that we normally get is, how do I know when the cell needs to be replaced? So with the cell life remaining, we're giving you kind of like a countdown timer in the percentage. When it gets down to 5%, 1%, 0%, we know it's time to change cells. But it allows you to also be proactive so that when you see that countdown timer getting lower and lower and lower, you can prepare your customer to get a replacement cell fairly in a short manner of time. All right. So when you click on the three buttons at the top, that gets you into the more advanced screen. And with the more advanced screen, all right, so it gives you this display here. You can actually get in and name your device. Like I mentioned before, if you've got a heat pump connected and you've got the ChlorSync connected, you can specifically name ChlorSync. You know, for my unit, I have Sean's ChlorSync, Sean's heat pump. Salt level, it's going to show you in parts per million. Again, when it starts dropping below 2,700, it'll also give you a notification, which is the bell will come up with the notification to tell you that you're low on salt and how many pounds of salt to add back in to get back up to the 3,500 parts per million. And the way that it calculates it is because in this gallons of water field, it comes from the factory at 0. You do need to enter how many gallons of water there is by clicking on that button. All right. Clicking on the buttons will allow you to put in the gallons of that particular body of water. Now, the other thing that we have is the reverse time setting. 4 hours is a factory reversal. All right. That seems to be a good setting for us, which allows us a good amount of cell lifetime and self-cleaning feature. We do give you the ability to increase to 5 hours, which actually helps extend the cell life if you reverse polarity not as frequently. So every 5 hours instead of every 4 hours will give you a little longer cell life by not having a reverse polarity. The only time I ever recommend going to the 5 hours is if you're maintaining to the LSI, the Langler Saturation Index, which basically prevents the cell from scaling up. So if you've got a pool that you never see it scale up and you're doing well with your LSI, 5 hours will extend the life of the cell. On the other hand, if you're seeing the cell scale pretty frequently and you don't have the total control system or the ChemSync system, reversing to 3 hours so it reverses more frequently will help keep the cell clean. But the bottom line is, if you continue to maintain LSI, you will have much fewer issues with that cell scaling up. All right.
Hey, Sean, sorry, one more, sorry to interrupt. One more question we have from Chris. He says, good morning. Is the sizing of the system based on a particular number of hours per day?
The sizing of the system, when we say, a cell's good up to 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, those are under ideal scenarios. So if you're running 24 hours a day at 100% output with perfect water chemistry, perfect stabilizer levels, salt levels, pH levels, that's what it's rated at. So if you take a 30,000 gallon cell and you're running it at, let's say, 8 hours a day instead, all right, that 30,000 gallon cell would probably be more properly sized for about a 10 to 15,000 gallon pool, with good long cell life. All right. I hope that makes sense. But whenever any manufacturer says this particular cell is good for up to however many gallons, it's under ideal scenario. And that's why, my recommendation is always oversize the cell. That way you don't have to worry about if they're running it 8 hours a day, 12 hours, or 24 hours a day. You're always going to be in the right range for that particular cell. But for the sake of being careful with the sizing and the cost of the equipment itself, I would say just look at the sizing up to gallons and say half of it would be what I would put it on. So 30,000, I'd put on a 15,000 gallon, 40,000 gallon cell, put on a 20,000 gallon cell. If it goes a little more, 25,000 gallons, you're still fine using a 40,000 gallon cell. You just have to run it at a little bit higher output. All right.
Thanks, Sean. We have one more question. Can you have multiple units properties on one app to monitor?
Yes, absolutely. All right. So the thing is with the one app, now let me take that back. Yes, you can. Each unit will have to have its own antenna. In the sake of if you've got a equipment in the same room, you can run low voltage wire from one unit to the second unit to the third unit, however many units you have, and you can identify them individually rather than a group of equipment. Okay, so yes, absolutely, you can do multiple equipment on one app. All right, and I think right now one of our service managers is doing that with, I think, 23 pieces of equipment. And that's not 23 pieces on his particular pool. He's got the availability or the ability to monitor 23 different pools that we have equipment on. That's in Miami, that's in Fort Lauderdale, that's in Tennessee, that's in California. So it doesn't have to be on one general location. It can be anywhere. So if you've got a bunch of customers all throughout the city that you're working in, and you've got a ChlorSync system, you can monitor quite a few of them on one app itself. All right, hope that answers that question. All right, so the next mode, I talked about the pool cover mode. It connects to the automatic cover so that when the cover is closed, it will reduce the output 20% or 1/5 of what your normal setting is. All right. And that's, like I said, specifically designed so that when a pool cover is closed, you don't need as much chlorine at all. So to avoid overchlorination, we will automatically reduce the output of this setting. With the PPC cells, right now, this will remain as a blank field. With the old ChlorSync systems, it will recognize the ChlorSync 30, ChlorSync 40, in this case, ChlorSync 50. We are looking at allowing you to manually enter the cell size if it's a PPC cell, although for right now, it will remain a blank field. But for the sake of the advanced functionality, like I said, it's got the ability to do the diagnostic, the test pool pilot. So on the ChlorSync app, if you click that 5 times, it will go to an advanced screen that actually opens up some more fields down here to show you how long the cell has been operating, how long the power supply has been operating, and what the amps and volts are. So it gives us a lot of information for us to do diagnostics on the system. All right. When we have the system in conjunction with the ChemSync system, as you can see on the desktop here, we've got the ability to toggle between the ORP and the pH screen. Again, with the arrows up and down, we can control the ORP reading. Now, if you're not familiar with ORP, because a lot of us are more familiar with free chlorine in parts per million, the ppm. All right, ORP is measured in millivolts, and it's a measurement of the amount of active oxidizer that's in the water. Oxidation reduction potential is what ORP stands for. But it's amount of the active oxidizer that's in the water, chlorine being an oxidizer. So the stronger or the higher the number you have, the more powerful oxidizer you have in the water. It comes factory set for 650 millivolts, and you would have to increase or decrease it based on your actual chlorine level. Okay. Again, on this desktop view, you can see that the flow's on. It's reading a current pH of 7.94, which we'll have to take a look at the pH screen, but that's probably going to be in the high side. Current ORP is reading 113 with a 570 set point. So we know that the cells should be on, and it's indicated right there, sanitizer's on. Acid pump is normal. Acid dispensed, it's going to give you a counter as to how much solution has been fed, as you can see here. You know, I mentioned before, we have a 5-gallon tank. This is showing 78 gallons of acid solution dispensed. So what that tells me is that there's a reset mode that this operator has not ever pressed that reset button. On the boost mode, it allows us to get into an acid boost. In this case, the acid boost is off. All right. So we get an overall view of what the ORP screen is showing you. On the pH screen, let's take a look at this one. All right, so the set point is at 7.4. On this particular unit, we've got the boost mode. So when you press the boost, it gives you another screen that asks you how many ounces a solution that you want to feed into the system. So it will override the on and off of the acid pump and leave it on until that amount of volume has been fed into the system. All right, so it's giving you an overall view of what your set point is. In this particular screen, current pH is 7.36. So the acid pump should be off at this point, all right, because it's below the pH set point. Current ORP is 636, all right. Sanitizer is off. So in this scenario, the ORP set point is probably going to be below this reading. That's why the sanitizer is off. Acid pump is normal. Acid pump dispensed, 21.65 gallons, and boost is off. Okay, so again, we're showing how much acid is dispensed. Now, I would give you the scenario of our system coming with a 5-gallon acid tank, so that what happens is, as you see the acid dispense getting towards 4-gallon fed or 4.5 gallons fed, it's going to give you the idea that, hey, I know I'm going to need to go out there and refill that acid tank to put more acid solution in it before it goes dry. Once you do that, though, you make sure that you go into the advanced chemical view so that we can get into resetting that acid counter. All right, so from your desktop view, again, the 3 top buttons on the top allows you to get into this advanced chemical screen. When we get into the advanced screen, the advanced functionality, let me just see something here. All right, so we've got, again, you can name your ChemSync unit. System is total control mode, so it's doing the ORP and pH operation. You can see we've got different toggle switches, manual control if you want to override and choose your own set points instead of using the factory set points. Automatic ORP control, automatic pH control, those are both set on for right now. Calibrate pH. So if at some point that you have a different pH on your test than what's reading, we can match the reading on the unit to match your water chemistry test. All right. pH min and max. So we're telling it what's the acceptable minimum pH and acceptable maximum pH before it gives you a warning. All right. So the normal factory setting is between 7.0 to 8.0. If we start seeing that pH rise above 8.0, it'll give you a notification. It'll give you a warning to let you know that there's something wrong with it. Either the probe is dirty. It could be that the acid tank is void of any solution. So it's trying to control the pH, but there's no solution to bring the pH back down. So that's what that pH min and max ranges for. Feed rate is basically selecting the acid pump. When you first install the ChemSync system, you've got this prime acid pump to, pretty much put solution into the acid feed lines to go to the manifold assembly. One of the things that I would recommend in regards to this setting is that when you prime the acid pump, when you first start up a system, use water only, okay? And the reason why I say use water only is because if you put an acid water solution in there and you discover that you've got some leaks or you need to loosen up a fitting, you're going to have acidic water going through there. So rather than dealing with, acidic water, maybe burning your hands or damaging some concrete that it may drip out on, if you use just water only, you don't have any fear of any kind of damage at that point.
John, there's a couple of questions in the Q&A. I don't know if you can see them, but they're asking if the systems are only for saltwater pools, and the other one is there an option to activate an auxiliary chlorine feeder if required?
All right, so the ChemSync system is specifically designed for the ChlorSync system. All right, so it will only work with our chemistry controller and the ChlorSync system and our PoolSync app. There are no plans right now to make it a standalone system to be able to work with other systems. As far as being able to activate a secondary chlorine system, we do not have that capability right now. Okay, so it's designed just as a single cell system. Now, if you do need to put in a 2-cell system, we do have some manifolds that allow you to do 2 tri-sensors and 2 cells and 2 power supplies. We can't connect one ChemSync system that'll communicate with both of those ChemSync systems and the PoolSync unit. All right. So on the advanced functionality screen, we've got this reset acid dispensed. When you click on that, it'll give you this pop-up screen. When you press OK, it will zero that acid dispensed meter back to 0. All right. So make sure that whenever you do refill the acid tanks, to get back into the reset acid dispensed. All right. So any questions at this point regarding the ChlorSync Gen II or the ChemSync automation system? Okay. All right. So commercial systems. If you're doing any kind of commercial pools, in the past, one of the pictures that I showed in the first screen with the AutoPilot systems was the AutoPilot Professional unit. Now, with the success that we're having with the Gen 2 ChlorSync systems, we decided that what we're going to do is we're going to utilize the power supply technology and the abilities of the ChlorSync Gen 2 to be able to communicate with the PoolSync system and have the ORPPH operation. So when we look at what we currently offer, the DIG 220, which is a single cell system that operates with this manifold assembly, and the AutoPilot Professional, which operates with this multiple cell manifold assembly, we can see on here that the single cell systems, or the cells will currently produce 2.62 pounds per day of output per cell. All right, which is quite a bit of chlorine generation on a single cell application. With the multiple cell manifold, the AutoPilot Professional, for each cell that's in the manifold, we'll have a power center attached with it also. Now, if you're familiar with this, we can do quite a bit of volume of water with a 6-cell system, which puts out over 15 pounds per day of chlorine production. That's a pretty big pool that'll be able to handle. All right, but we know that in the past, this has always been a big, heavy box to work with. Now, what I'm going to show you is pretty much going to be a conceptual design of the ChlorSync Pro unit. So with the commercial systems, we're going to be compatible with ORPPH controllers. It gives us a modular design, redundant operation, and high cell outputs, okay? So, oh, don't tell me it's not on here. All right, so let me talk about this a little bit. So the design concept that we have is going to be utilizing the multiple cell application still. We're going to do the multiple power supplies and the power module configuration. And the benefit that we found to this configuration is that when this is in operation, let's say that one cell starts to fail or starts to get scaled up, our design allows the rest of them to continue generating chlorine. All right. So the big benefit of this is that although you may have an issue with a cell or a power module, the rest will continue operating so that we're always generating chlorine. All right. So it's never at a point where you're totally shut down on chlorine production because there's some kind of, a product failure in a cell or a power module. Now, let me get out of this and go into another presentation. All right, are you able to see this one with a black background, conceptual commercial system? All right, so like I said, I think the following is conceptual and not the finalized product. So I'm just going to give you a snapshot of what engineering is working on. All right, so based on the ChlorSync power supplies, which does not output as many amps as a current AutoPilot Professional, we're looking at a difference of 6.0 amps versus 8 amps. And what that translates to is a higher amperage can produce more chlorine production. So that equates to the ChlorSync system will produce 2.1 pounds per day versus a 2.62 pounds per day of the old digital and the Pro system. All right. So the ChlorSync Pro, what we're going to be doing is going to have a similar control box. All right, so we're following the design of the AutoPilot Professional unit, but with the newest technologies and the next generation of power supplies. Chlorine production will be up to 18 pounds per day. Works with the PPC5 commercial AutoPilot cell. It will be PoolSync and ChemSync ready. It will have ORP input support. So if there's already a commercial job with an ORP and pH controller, we would be able to utilize that instead of having to go to the ChemSync system. So if there's an existing ORP pH controller, an existing chemical pump, we can work with those systems as well. With the use of the PoolSync system, any kind of firmware updates is transmitted over the air so that it's updated at all times, and it's simplified installation and service. So let's take a look at some of the other features on here. We're looking at making a hingeless design, so there's no external hinges that sticks out like the old Professional unit has stainless steel hinges on the outside of the unit. There should be an user interface with the buttons to control it on the front of the unit without having to open up a door, is what the Professional unit contained before, was a door that covered everything up. And we're looking at doing a metal housing, so it's going to be a nice durable piece of equipment as well. On a side-by-side view, you can see it's going to be a much smaller footprint. It's going to be lighter as well. Here's an overlay of the AutoPilot Professional in the purple with the hinges versus the ChlorSync Pro unit, which is going to be a much smaller unit now. For our international sales, it's going to save on freight charges to get it out to you. But it's, like I said, it's also allowing us to make it a more compact system, which I'm sure all the equipment rooms these days are very small and tight in space. So it gives us something a lot better conceptually to be able to put in equipment rooms. On the manifold configuration, you can see that we've got a 3, 6, or 9 cell configuration in that manifold design. A single tri-sensor, as you can see on the top right here. Single tri-sensor. We've got this header, which goes on into the 3 banks of cells. So let's say that you only need 2 cells. This would be a dummy cell in that 3rd position. All right. So another example, let's say that you only needed 5 cells. You would have 5 actual cells and another dummy cell, or if you needed 4 cells, we'd have 2 dummy cells in there. All right. But this just does give us a capability of expanding. One of the things that that our AutoPilot Professional manifold configuration allows us to do was to expand on it. If we put in 3 cells and it wasn't enough, we can always add more cells into the system, up to 6 cells, up to 9 cells. And equally in the power supply, we would add transformers and the power modules on the inside of the ChlorSync Pro box to expand on it as well. The return header, which is the bottom portion of it, you can see that the outlet on it, you can put in either direction by simply flipping the manifold in the opposite direction if you needed to. All right. Internally for the ChlorSync Pro, as many boards that we need on here will be as many transformers that we'll have in the box. But you can see that it's going to be a simplistic design where those power modules are going to be installed on a DIN rail, which allows you to just basically hang on the top, snap down on the bottom, and then connect your basic wires going onto the system. So it's going to be pretty easy if you need to upgrade it, if you need to service it to replace parts. There's going to be cooling fans on the bottom of the unit. You can see on here we've got 5 fans that's going to be serviceable if you need to replace them simply from the bottom instead of having to take it apart on the inside. Banana plugs plug into the black and red connectors on the bottom, single tri-sensor, and then you've got your electrical conduit port along the bottom as well. So you can see there's 5 cooling fans. There's going to be exhaust baffles so that the air that's coming in is going to keep those power centers cool. And then there's another vent to let the air back out. This panel where the display unit is going to be a single display that'll operate as many power centers that we have on the inside there. So it makes it pretty simplistic to operate the whole system with one control panel.
Hey, Sean, sorry to interrupt again. We got 2 more questions. Mark wants to know, will the slides be available? Are we able to forward these slides?
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll put it into like a PDF slideshow presentation, and then you can distribute it out.
Okay, perfect. And then the second question from Graham was, for the ChlorSync Pro, if Wi-Fi signal is spotty in the pump room, can the unit be connected directly to the router?
The answer is no. All right, because right now the connectivity is by way of Wi-Fi, but here's the good thing, and let me see if I can pull that up. So when we're dealing with the ChlorSync system, we realize that there are going to be some issues to where if you're in a equipment area where it's real spotty, your Wi-Fi signal is going to be very hard to catch. What we're going to allow you to do is the ChlorSync antenna is going to be capable of a couple of things. All right. So the new antenna allows us a removable antenna. And the nice thing with that is this is what it allows us to do. By taking off that antenna, you can use any commercially available high gain antenna extender, connect it to the antenna, and then run this out. We can run this out to, I believe it's 1,000 meters away from the antenna to a place where you can get a good Wi-Fi signal. All right. And that should alleviate any kind of issues where the equipment room area, brick walls, and you don't get a good Wi-Fi signal in there. This allows you to bring that antenna outside to a point where you can get in a good signal. Okay. All right. So Chris, you had asked, is there an Ethernet connection on the ChlorSync? Currently, there is not. All right. Now, another thing that we're looking at is perhaps doing a 4G connectivity, which is going to be a little bit different than the Wi-Fi connectivity, but that might give us some other options at that point. But currently, there's no Ethernet connection for the ChlorSync antenna. All right. So basic troubleshooting is just like your regular AutoPilot unit. Again, having 3 main components allows you to troubleshoot it pretty quickly. The power center is going to give you either a red light if there's an issue, a red flashing light if it's a critical issue, or a green light if everything is good. The The pool sync allows you to monitor remotely, and actually, if there's any kind of problematic scenarios, it will give you a notification on the app, and you can see exactly what the notification is and what the problem is. Like I've offered in the past, if you've got an AutoPilot unit that you're going out on because there are issues, if you need my assistance on it, just give me a heads up. Either WhatsApp me or text me a message saying, Sean, I'll be out there at a certain time. And, if I'm available, I'll let you know. Perfect. If I'm not going to be available, I'll give you an alternative as far as like, maybe an hour later, an hour sooner, I'll be available so I can help you with that. But basically, when I do a troubleshooting, I'm going to let the AutoPilot unit tell me what's going on. Because if it's a flow related issue, it's going to give you a red flow light. And that way we can inspect if the flow sensor's good, the tri sensor's good, if the manifold is blocked up, if the cell is scaled up, or if it's equipment related. If your filter's dirty and not letting enough water through there, that can cause a flow issue. So there's a lot of different scenarios that the power supply will help walk you through much quicker as to what the problem is. All right. So yeah, if you need my assistance on any of these jobs, I'm going to ask you to call me when you're standing in front of the unit. So it'll be a much quicker service call. Okay. Power supply is one of the parts. The tri-sensor is the other part. Now, if there's any issues with either your flow not detecting properly, or if the salt level is reading off, or if the water temperature is reading erroneously, with a bad temperature sensor, it will default to, I think, 74 degrees, but the system will continue operating. With a bad temperature sensor, it just means that you're not going to have the automatic temperature compensation feature. All right. With a bad salt reading, we do have a fair amount of calibration for the salt reading, and I believe that's plus or minus 1,000 parts per million. But if your salt reading is reading much different from what your test shows, there might be a tri-sensor issue or a wiring issue with the system. Okay. Again, with the flow, we can look at all the different things that can affect the flow. And then getting back into the diagnostics, if you don't have the pool sync, we can do a diagnostic on the power supply itself, or if you've got the old ChlorSync system, we could do it on the display using the up and down arrow buttons. Okay, so for a diagnostic test on the ChlorSync display, is basically press the up button 5 times, down button 5 times. It'll go into your diagnostic mode. Okay, it'll show you if it's generation 1, it'll show you what CS cell is connected. It'll show you the salt level, water temperature, and then it'll go into the cell amps and volts. Again, with chlorine generator systems, those are the most important diagnostics that allows you to figure out exactly what's going on with the system, especially the amps and volts. Okay. And then you've got the cell with the ability to check the cell life remaining. That gives us a good idea of if the cell needs to be replaced because of it being worn out. Just keep in mind also that if you do let the cell scale up, that's going to deplete the cell much quicker than any other condition. So the best that you can do to maintain your Langmuir saturation index and maintain balanced water conditions, the longer that cell's going to last, and the more the cleaner that the cell's going to be from any kind of scale formation. Okay. And that's basically it as far as troubleshooting for the system. It's a real simple system. Currently, unless there's a manifold issue, we can replace the cell, we can replace a tri-sensor. If there's a problem with the power center, our warranty is basically replace the power center. All right, there's no components on the inside that we want you to replace if there's any issues there. There is a 10 amp fuse on the inside, so that's always something that you can check. It's a regular kind of like an automotive fuse that just basically is a blade that you slide in and out. It's not the tube type, so it makes it real easy to check and replace if you need to. All right. Here's my name, my cell phone number. That's my WhatsApp number also. And here's my email address. So please feel free to contact me, call me, whatever you need to. We're here to support you. All right. Thank you again, and have a great day.